This time on Sports and Society, sports and higher education, academics, athletics, and financial opportunity.
Most of what goes on in sport goes on off the playing field.
It's about what you have on them in order to protect yourself.
I was first raped violently.
Well, you're finished. You'll never play football again.
Obviously, shoe contracts for $400,000 or $500,000.
Morals and ethics don't exist above and beyond the society that they're a part of.
Nowadays, kids are faced with the choice of do you want a couple of $1 million or your college degree?
Sport is a metaphor for what goes on in the real world.
Sports and higher education in the United States have been intertwined since the early years of the 20th century. The pursuit of excellence in both the body and the mind is laudable, but how the pursuit of excellence is carried out in collegiate sports creates management and ethics problems for institutions, alumni, students, athletes, and virtually everyone else associated with higher education today. Some believe that the integrity of our educational institutions is at stake in the way collegiate sports is handled. What are the rights and responsibilities which govern decisions in collegiate sports? What are the values that should drive these choices? We discussed these issues at the Summit, the first international conference on sports ethics. Let's revisit the Summit and consider some of the issues raised there.
Well, I think the biggest challenge is that it is the most visible part of our institutions. And consequently, I believe that the starting point must be the athletic program must reflect the values of that institution. And if you've decided that winning is so important, that whatever it takes, whether it be a question of character or a question of content, whatever it takes, we're going to win. I think, in effect, we as administrators and presidents are saying that that's really the values that we hold dear at our institutions. If not, we need, as presidents and senior administrators and governing boards, to say, no, winning is not at all cost. And so I think we start with that foundation. That is winning so important in our institutions that we're willing to do whatever it takes to win. I think the second thing that we have been so guilty of as administrators and governing boards is the hypocrisy about intercollegiate athletics. And I think we could define that in several ways. We certainly can go back to what I was just talking about. In terms of the issue of winning, we talk about, oh, it's so important to develop the student athlete, it's so important about graduation rates, et cetera, et cetera. The reality is most of our actions really reflect that it's about winning. Coaches get raises, coaches lose jobs based on winning and losing more often than any other factor in the process. We need to become honest and say winning is really the key if that's what it is and if that's how we're going to make decisions. That's one of the ways. The second way, we talk about how intercollegiate athletics is an integral part of our institutions. But in so many of our institutions, the larger programs now, we say, yes, you're an integral part, but we don't involve athletics in any other part of what goes on in our institution. Plus, we say to them, you're a very important part of this institution, but we're not going to fund you. We're going to make you have to go raise the funds. You have to raise the funds by winning. You have to raise the funds by filling stadiums. You have to do all these things. So we send such a mixed message. We say to them, on the one hand, you're an integral part of our institution, but we're not going to give you any help. You've got to go do it yourself. And that's hypocrisy. If we really believe that athletics is a part of the academy, then let's put it in the academy. And let's take the pressure off of coaches and athletic directors to go out and fill stadiums and to get guarantees and to raise money in all the different ways they have to raise money. Because when we do that, we're saying, if you want to stay here, you've got to raise money. And obviously, if you want to raise money, that means you're going to be a winner. You have to win games. That's hypocrisy. We ought to stop doing that. I feel very strongly that we've got to the point that we just have talked about something that's not a reality anymore, and that is that, that it's just part of the institution. In many cases, big-time athletics in America is, in fact, bigger than the institution in which it's located. And we can see that in terms of presidents losing jobs. We can see that in terms of behaviors that in any other segment of our society we would probably respond to very, very strongly. Somehow or another, in the world of intercollegiate athletics, if it's been a winning kind of situation, we have a way to somehow get through it. We need to get honest with some people and say, no, that's not a value that we appreciate and we accept anymore.
Well, one of the functions of the coach and the athletic director that's evolved over the last 20 years is fundraiser. And much of that's done with prominent alumni and not so prominent alumni, any alumnus. Go to alumni meetings and tell them why they need to build you a new stadium or a new locker room or a new study center or a new tutorial assistance program or what have you. And corporate America has gotten very intimately involved in compensating both coaches and the programs themselves. And that's just a reality. It's a fact of the free enterprise system. It's a good way to advertise, to draw attention to your business. You don't have to be a sneaker company to do that. I mean, there are a lot of companies. I mean, fast food companies and others are actually in the stadia now. And you see certain emblems when you drive up to certain stadiums that are very commercially oriented. And the alcohol companies have been brilliant for many years, if one means by brilliance, developing a lot of sales on the college campus with promotions for charities and what have you. So corporate America is into it big time, and that's not going to change. Is it all good? No. Is it all bad? No. Once again, it always comes back to perspective. What is the message to the young people that are affected by all this? If the message is, okay, you're getting good local corporate support, you got a new stadium, let's go study hard, play hard, fine. If, on the other hand, there's some control aspect and the company has a proprietary interest, it starts to become unholy and starts to name who the next administrator is going to be or the next coach. And I'm speaking of individual alumni as well. Now it's getting out of hand, and that has caused some real nightmares for college programs. So it goes back once again to perspective. Nowhere in the charters of our universities does it say anything about competing with the NFL or the NBA, but that's what we're doing. So we either need to go back to what we're really supposed to be as educational institutions and have a football department with a tenured professor that's called coach, who's judged by his one-loss record, but also by the graduation record and by the comportment and the behavior of the players and all those things, by the campus, not by the media and not by national television. And we play these games for the benefit of the students, not the wealthy alumni or the fans or the networks. I mean, it's just gotten totally out of perspective, and it's not going to change. So in a very, very practical sense, we have to have guidelines, and we have to, sound minds must prevail with sets of principles and means of using these enormous corporate and individual resources in constructive ways for the student athletes. And that's not easy to do.
Contrary to the public myth, schools lose huge amounts of money, and they were quoting the NCAA's figures of 52%, but as I explained there, that is way too low because that it's self-reported. So schools can do the books pretty well any way they want. So things like who pays for these new facilities and such, or the athletic department facilities, which regular athletes can't use, by the way, and they're only for the elite athletes in the intercollegiate sports. And they're essentially, they're not built with money up front, they're paid for by debt servicing. And the way that's done is students pay for them. On their bill at the beginning of the semester, there's an item called activities fees. And they think, well, that's for, you know, the co-recreational gym, various other things. And part of it is, but at many, many schools, a huge hunk of it goes to paying the debt servicing on the athletic department's buildings and such. Now, this is off the books.
Every athletic director will tell you, and any college administrator, oh, the sports budgets are so strapped. Sure, we'd like to pay athletes. Yes, we'd like to treat them better. We wish we could give them free pizzas and hamburgers and money for dates and this and that, but we just don't have the money. We're strapped as it is. We're running 23 sports, and we can't do this and can't do that. Somebody, and I regret I don't remember his name, did an interesting study to reflect light on this subject. He showed that over the past 20 years, the University of Maine, I think was his example, had roughly the same amount of scholarship athletes each year as the University of Michigan. University of Michigan has an annual sports budget of about $30 million. University of Maine, an annual sports budget of about $5 million. Now here's a $25 million disparity, and yet Maine is accommodating, educating, and working with as many athletes as the University of Michigan, or roughly as many. And so you said, what's the extra $25 million being used for? That's the whole problem with this idea of strapped sports budgets. If you overspend or spend money unwisely, you can always be strapped.
There's a huge myth that college sports generates huge amounts of money for the university, and in most cases that's absolutely untrue. And even more to the point, at the end of the year, when an athletic department or no department can end up in the red, they've got to zero out their books. And the way the university does it, and does it historically, is move money from the general fund over to cover that deficit. So at one level, the public reads, the NCAA pays $1 billion for the men's basketball tournament over 7 years and such, and that's true. But where that money goes, a huge hunk of it goes to the NCAA itself, which is a huge bureaucracy and much feather bedding and such. But when it reaches an athletic department, it usually stays right there. I mean, coaches' offices are magnificent. The staff keeps growing. I mean, one of the amazing things, when I did the research for college sports 10 years ago, my English department had 74 full-time faculty. We're now down to 59, and we're shrinking. When I did that book, the athletic department had something like 78 faculty members. It now has 149. So it's the only part of the university that's growing, where universities are under tremendous financial constraint, and the athletic departments keep growing, keep getting bigger and fatter. And in part, there's very little oversight of their budgets. Central administrators and presidents just don't want to go near that kind of thing, because very often, certainly at established universities that have long been playing college sports like mine, a power coach like Bob Knight has his own constituency in the state. And if the president said, well, for instance, the basketball program, men's basketball, generates something like $2.5 million a year. This is for 15 players maximum. So before, in the session, that commissioner of the Ohio Valley Conference said, well, the big expense is paying tuition for the athletes. Well, you can certainly pay 15 players tuition out of $2.5 million. But although they make a profit from that, their expenses are something like $1.3 million. So where is that going? And it's going into private planes, it's going into huge salaries for assistant coaches, it's going into a whole panoply of things.
Well, I think sometimes we may try to take comfort in the concept that athletics is just a mirror of the larger society. That is really no place to take comfort in higher education. We have a responsibility in the academy not to mirror society, but to perhaps provide leadership and direction and modify some of the things that happen in society. So we can't really just say, okay, society says it's okay, let's just go.
There are several competing values, rights, and responsibilities which are difficult to manage coherently in the face of institutional demands for athletic success, institutional integrity, and financial objectives. Dr. Bill Shelton, president of Eastern Michigan University, articulated ethics and management issues in collegiate sports confronting university presidents. It seems impossible to integrate the values, rights, and responsibilities of the university together with the desirable consequences of a successful winning sports program under the present circumstances. Coach Bill Curry points out the influence that corporate interests have on the athletic program at major universities, and that the coach is often employed as a fundraiser to obtain the ingredients necessary to win. Dr. Murray Sperber points out that collegiate sports are not moneymakers for most colleges. Colleges often hide the true costs of their sports programs. Dick DeVenzio agrees with Dr. Sperber that major college sports budgets are inflated, and these sports programs are not expected to operate on tight budgets, as are the academic departments of the university. How should we make decisions in the academy regarding sports? What are the institutional and personal issues which impede institutional and personal integrity?
No rational answer to intercollegiate athletics. It doesn't compute even within itself, because just as I talk about the difficulty of a broad sweep when you talk about these superpower programs and these Division III programs within intercollegiate athletics and within the individual institution, between your revenue sports of football and basketball, maybe sometimes baseball, and then your track and swimming, where often there's no revenue coming in. There's no way, when we say, again, this is that hypocrisy coming out, that it's all about the student athlete, and it's all about competition, and it's all about amateur, and it's all about developing team and workmen and working together, and all those kinds of, we give all of those things, but then you look where the budget is. And it's very difficult to explain intellectually how this can be, other than, well, this is what society wants, and this is somehow how we've done it. So I do believe that A. Bartlett Giamatti, many years ago when he was still at Yale, before he went to baseball, and of course his death, but he was talking to the faculty there one day, and the issue of athletics came up at Yale, Ivy School, and he said, make no mistake about it, intercollegiate athletics is inextricably linked to the American university. And it is. It's been a part of American higher education, and it will be a part of higher education. So it's impossible to be able to justify intellectually and rationally how we go about even the funding of athletics in America.
I've said over and over again, I would like college athletes to be treated like all other American citizens. No better and no worse. Don't let them in colleges where they don't belong. Don't let them into courses that they don't qualify for. Don't give them diplomas that they have not earned. And don't restrict them from having agents. Don't say they can't have a T-shirt. Don't say they can't enter in a contract for wearing Nikes or Reeboks or anything else. Treat them like all other American citizens. I guess one of my pet peeves, universities are more than happy to have millionaire students in their classes. A kid whose father is president of IBM and drives to school in a Mercedes, he's be written up in the school paper, or some people are proud of protecting his privacy, but it comes out in little ways. Hey, the president of IBM's son goes to Duke, and he chose Duke over Stanford. That's a selling point for the university. But if an athlete comes in with great talent, and somebody said, well, this booster is so interested in this kid, he wants to give this kid $1 million to throw a football in Gainesville instead of Tallahassee. Oh, this is a crime. And isn't it terrible that a guy, it's okay to be rich at a university as long as your father has the money. But if you have some talent and someone cares that you go to his alma mater and wants to give you money to go there, I would say, what's wrong with that? Why should we care where a person goes and how much money he has via his parents or is able to obtain via an agent or a booster or a coach or anyone else? I mean, there shouldn't be any reason in America that we should care how much money anybody gets or how he obtains it, as long as it's not illegal.
Even though we expect our athletes to practice many hours, to play games, to be on the road, to do all of that, we in many of our institutions probably have more stringent requirements on the number of hours successfully completed, progress towards a degree for athletes than any other group that's on a grant and aid or scholarship at our institution. There's more pressure on our student athletes to perform in that, to keep up with those, and yet at the same time the demands we have on their time to participate in the athletic contest. A little bit of hypocrisy again.
all sports fans realize that these are highly sought after and very valuable, economically valuable athletes. The NCAA has persisted in calling these people amateurs. And again, I think every intelligent sports fan and most unintelligent sports fans realize that we have a system that's professional in every way, except that the universities have managed to keep the athletes poor so that they're getting their entertainment product virtually for free. And then they like to say, well, we've provided them with tutors, and we've done this and that. We have academic advisors for them, and we have this and we have that. They have nothing unless they have a public relations problem. When too many people are flunking out, then they come with the tutors, because public relations are saying, hey, you're bringing these guys in, and they're just hired hands, they're not real students. So tutors and academic advisors and all these things came about because the universities were on the run as far as their PR goes.
I think the largest contributor to any intercollegiate athletic program should be the president of the university. And by that, I mean that the budgeting process should come from there, because I believe without the ability to provide the financial support for that program, it takes away your ability to control some things that are going on. I think we need to get back and take the pressure off of the athletics people to raise the money to operate their program. Those are some of the challenges I think we as presidents need to take leadership roles and be willing to stand up to our boards and stand with our boards and say these are unacceptable behaviors and we're not going to have that as a part of our society.
For many years I was opposed to professionalizing college sports, but it seems to me in a sort of one stroke through the Gordian knot, you eliminate all the cant and all the hypocrisy around college sports. I could very much see bringing in the athletes under staff contract more than anything else. And you know, most people who work for universities are not faculty members, are staff. And so you bring in your basketball players or your football players, and you pay them a certain amount per month. If they want to take a course or two, fine. If they don't, that's okay. You could say, if you don't make it in the pros, we'll give you, free tuition afterwards. You could do it, any number of ways, but it would just eliminate this whole student-athlete myth. What would be left of college athletics would be Division III, real students playing real intercollegiate sports. And I think this is a wonderful solution.
Universities should not pay athletes, but they should not prohibit athletes from making money. In other words, a university should take anybody, just like the admissions process is essentially blind financially unless you're applying for financial aid. When you ask to be admitted, they don't ask you how much your father makes. Do you get in or not get in because of how much money your father has? The athletic team shouldn't care how much money you've been able to obtain from Nike or from boosters or from anyone else when you get there. The only important thing is, do you conduct yourself properly? Do you follow the rules of the team? Do you go to class if you're calling yourself a college student? And are you meeting the requirements of other students? Not requirements that are set aside because you're 6'9", requirements that just exist because you're a student. I mean, the universities either have to hold athletes to the same standards as they hold the other students, or they have to say, these guys have such economic value that we're going to change the rules for them. Even that wouldn't hurt the universities. The universities have bent over backwards to change all their rules to meet the needs of their clientele. If you're in an industry, they'll have classes that meet at 6 in the morning, so you can still get to work. If you're a single mother, they have classes at night and daycare being set up to accommodate the special needs of special clientele. But they never try to make special accommodations to the athletes unless it's a public relations bonanza to do so.
Balancing athletics and sports in the academy requires each stakeholder to identify and commit to the values, rights, and responsibilities which are embraced by their institution. Dr. Shelton lamented that there seems to be no rational way to balance the demands of college sports and the academy. He characterizes the way that athletes are treated, with special requirements and rules that apply only to athletes, as an example of hypocrisy. One step towards a solution, he suggests, is that the university, in order to keep control, should be the major contributor of the money for the athletic program. Dick DeVenzio pleaded for athletes to be treated like all other college students, without special rules singling them out, and without special funding from the university supporting them. He believes that by letting the free market apply to college athletes, some of the value conflicts inherent in the student-athlete situation are eliminated. Dr. Sperber believes that colleges should pay the athletes in order to eliminate the value, rights, and responsibility conflicts which arise because big-time college programs must play scholar athletes. The pursuit of excellence is a virtue, but the pursuit of a single virtue to the exclusion of other virtues becomes a vice. The reality that educational institutions can enhance their stature and financial stability through successful sports programs tempts all the stakeholders in higher education to tolerate the attitude that it is permissible to do whatever it takes to win.